When you're young, betrayal hits like thunder. It's loud and sharp, something you yell about, cry about, punch walls over. But when you're older, betrayal becomes something else entirely. It turns quiet, almost gentle at first. It slips into your life like a faint draft through a cracked window. You don't feel it all at once. You feel it slowly, subtly, the way night replaces day, not in one motion, but in the quiet falling of shadows. And then one day, without realizing when it began, you look around and everything you trusted has been hollowed out. My name is Harold Preston, and I am 58 years old. I've spent my whole life in Ohio, working with my hands, building and restoring old cars the way some men write poems. Metal was never just metal to me. It was memory. It was history. It was something with a spirit inside it. Something that could be brought back from rust and silence to roar like it had been waiting all those years to breathe again. I ran a small family restoration shop, the kind of place where grease lived under the nails and the music was the hum of engines being reborn. I believed, truly believed, that life was something you built slowly with patience, fairness, and loyalty. You treat others right, they treat you right. You give trust, and trust grows. That's the world I thought I lived in. But life doesn't care what you believe. It doesn't care what you love or what you've built. Sometimes life just hands you a lesson, not gentle, not fair, just sharp and unforgettable. And the lesson it handed me came in the form of a young man who walked into my shop one dusty Tuesday morning. A young man who looked lost, hungry and hopeful. A young man I would come to love like my own blood. A young man who would take everything I gave him and turn it into something sharp, enough to cut me open from the inside. He called me Pops. He sat at my dinner table. I celebrated his birthdays. I taught him the craft that took 3 generations of Preston men to master. I opened my heart, my home, and my future to him, and I did it gladly, because I believed in him. I believed in the goodness I thought I saw in his eyes. And I believed that after losing my wife, after waking up to silence for so many mornings, I stopped counting. Maybe life was giving me someone to care for again. Maybe I had a second chance to not be alone. But trust is a strange thing. When you give it to the wrong person, it becomes a weapon. It becomes the very tool they use to break you. And the person who taught me that lesson wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some business competitor or some bitter rival. No, it was him. The boy I raised. The boy I trusted. The boy I would have given my last breath for. This is the story of how he broke me. How he took what was left of my heart and my life and crushed it in ways I never imagined a person could. But this is also the story of what he never expected, because when the truth finally surfaced, when the lies began to crack and crumble, it wasn't me who shattered. It was him, not through fists, not through threats, not through revenge brewed in anger, but through something colder, older, something time itself delivers, when patience runs out and truth can no longer be hidden. So sit with me for a while. Listen slow, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about a man who lost everything and found a way to stand back up, not with fire, but with truth. And the truth, in the end, broke him apart. I met Tyler on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, one of those Ohio mornings where the wind seems to carry a hint of winter in its breath. The leaves were halfway gone from the trees, twirling across the cracked pavement outside my shop like small pieces of rust shaking loose from an old frame. I remember the sound the door made when he pushed it open. Not loud, just a soft chime. But for some reason it stuck with me. Maybe because so many things in my life had gone silent by then. He stepped inside like he wasn't sure he was welcome. Thin, like meals was something he hoped for but didn't expect. His jacket looked like it came from a thrift store bin, too big in the shoulders, sleeves falling past his hands. His shoes were worn at the soles. He moved like a person who had learned how to make themselves small. Voice low, eyes never staying still for more than a second. He said, "Sir, I just need a chance. I'll work hard. I promise." There was no shaking hand, no practiced pitch, just a tired voice and a hopeful face. He had the look of someone who had gotten used to doors being closed. And at that time in my life, I knew that feeling a little too well. I didn't need help, not really. The shop was small and I managed it fine on my own. But grief has a strange way of hollowing a man out. It leaves room inside you where something else used to live. My wife, Linda, had passed 10 years before. A slow kind of loss that takes more than it shows while it is happening. After she was gone, the house felt too quiet. The mornings felt longer. The coffee tasted different, even though I made it the same way. Work was the only place that felt solid. The only place where things made sense. I understood engines. I understood metal. I understood the sound of wrenches clinking in a metal tray. People, though. People were harder. Maybe I let him in because I didn't want the quiet anymore. So I told him he could start. Nothing big at first. Sweeping floors, cleaning off engine blocks, holding a flashlight steady while I worked, fetching parts from storage. I noticed he did everything with a kind of carefulness, like he was afraid of doing it wrong. And when he listened like the world depended on it, asking questions, but not the kind of questions that wasted time. Questions that showed he was paying attention. And in a world full of young people who talk more than they hear, that mattered. So I taught him not just how to hold the wrench or how to sand chrome without scratching the finish. I taught him how to feel the work, how to understand that every machine was made by hands and could be understood by hands, how an engine has moods, how metal can be stubborn, how sometimes the problem is not in the part you think is broken, but in the way the energy flows through it. These were things you only learn after years of doing. Things my father told me when I was young. Things I learned with bruised knuckles and long nights spent under flickering shop lights. Tyler watched everything. Not just the work, the way I spoke to customers, the price I quoted depending on how their shoulders sat when they walked in, the way I talked about cars like they had souls, the way I kept Linda's old mug sitting on the windowsill even though it had been empty for years. He didn't just learn the trade, he learned the life around it, and before I realized it, the rhythm of my days was no longer just mine. Dinners weren't eaten alone anymore. He'd come over some nights and we'd cook something simple. Chili, roasted chicken, the kind of food that fills the kitchen with warmth. Then Christmas came, and it felt strange to not have someone to buy a gift for. So I wrapped up a good wrench set and gave it to him. He looked at it the way some people look at the sunrise. Birthdays came. Conversations followed. About life. About mistakes. About the dreams people are afraid to say out loud. I found myself telling him things I had not said to another person in years. Things I thought had died with Linda. And then one day, we were in the shop, grease on our hands, engine parts spread across the table, and he said it, so casually, so natural, like the word had just been waiting, "Pops," and I felt something open in my chest, something warm, something living, something I thought I had lost forever. It was the first time since Linda's smile faded in that hospital bed that I felt like I belonged to someone again. I did not know. Standing in that quiet shop, with the wind rattling the windows and the smell of oil thick in the air, that I was letting a wolf walk right into my heart. I didn't know that the same word that warmed me would one day feel like a knife. Not yet. The beginning always feels gentle, even when the ending is already there, waiting. 3 years passed like seasons rolling over each other. The shop felt different with Tyler in it, livelier, younger. He had a way of filling the air with energy, like static on a winter sweater. Customers came in asking for him by name. Some folks even joked that I had finally found my replacement. I would just smile and shake my head, though a small part of me liked hearing it. It made me feel like I had done something right, like I had helped build someone into something good. Then came the call. It was a Thursday afternoon when my old friend from Amarillo rang me up. Said he knew a guy who had something special. A car sitting on a farm outside Lubbock, forgotten under a tarp and decades of dust. A 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge, real deal, matching numbers, original interior under all that decay. Only a handful of them left in the world with pedigree and untouched frames, the kind of machine collectors dream about in quiet moments. The kind of car that tells a story just by existing. I remember standing there with the phone pressed to my ear, sunlight cutting through the shop windows, dust hanging in the air like slow falling snow. I knew instantly what that car meant. It was not just a project. It was a doorway. The kind of doorway a small town restoration shop doesn't get twice. The kind of thing that changes how people say your name. When I told Tyler, he stopped mid-sentence like his breath had caught on something. His eyes lit up in a way I had never seen before. It was like the whole world suddenly made sense to him. We sat at the dinner table that night, the same place we had talked about everything from heartbreak to carburetor tuning. The kitchen light was soft. The house felt warm, and he leaned forward, hands open, hope pouring out of him like he couldn't contain it. He said, "Pops, we could be legendary. This could be our thing." And I heard something deeper in his voice, something that felt like belonging, like we weren't just two men working on cars, like we were building a legacy that stretched farther than Ohio, something that would outlive both of us. Our thing, not mine, ours. It had been a long time since I felt like I had an hour with anybody. The buy was expensive, $87,000. That was no small sum. That was decades of savings. Money I had planned to retire on. Money I had guarded carefully because once you hit your 50s, you start to realize how close the horizon is. But looking at him across that table, seeing what it meant to him to be included, to be believed in, to be part of something bigger than his own past, I didn't hesitate. I wired the money the next morning. When the transport truck pulled up 2 weeks later, the car looked like something dug out of time itself. Rust spread like bruises across the body panels. The paint had faded into a ghost of what it once was. But the bones were there. The spirit was there. And I could see Tyler looking at it like a man looking at a treasure. He never thought he would be allowed to touch. We rolled it into the shop. And for 9 months we worked. Not as boss and employee, not even as teacher and student, but as the men connected by the same heartbeat. Nights blurred into each other. Music played low in the background. The world outside disappeared. The only thing that existed was the machine in front of us. Every bolt we cleaned, every weld we repaired, every metal panel we coaxed back into shape, every inch of chrome we polished until it caught reflections like water. We did not just restore a car. We restored purpose. We restored connection. We restored something living. And people noticed. First it was just local folks coming to take pictures. Then bloggers. Then collectors from out of state sending messages asking when the car would be shown. Then a small restoration show from cable TV reached out, wanting to film a segment. Suddenly, the world was saying Tyler's name. He started being recognized at car meets. People shook his hand. They asked him for advice. They called him talented, brilliant, gifted, and every time I saw someone praise him, something in my chest grew warm, almost proud in a way that felt deeper than blood. I thought Linda would have liked him. She would have said I needed someone to care for, someone to guide, someone to give what was left of my heart to. What I did not understand was that pride can be a blindfold, and love, even the kind you feel for someone you think of as your own child, can make you miss the small changes, the small shifts, the small cracks in the wall you do not notice until the whole house has already begun to lean. I did not see it then, but something in him had already started to change. The shift didn't arrive like a storm. Storms announce themselves. They rumble, they darken the sky, they warn you. No, this came like slow rot, like termites in the beams of a house you believe is solid. At first, you don't see anything. You just sense. Something had started small. So small I almost told myself I imagined it. When customers came in, Tyler used to watch me speak. Listen, learn, wait his turn. But now he started cutting in, talking over me, jumping ahead to answer questions that were mine to handle. Not rude, just eager, but eager in a way that nudged me aside. Like I was old with being replaced by new paint. I brushed it off. He's young, he's excited, he's proud. But then, pride turned into performance. He started telling stories to clients. Stories that belonged to me. Stories about auctions I went to. About deals I fought tooth and nail to win. About late nights sanding chrome until my hands screamed. But in his version, he was the one who did it. The people listening didn't know the difference. And why would they? He spoke smooth, confident, like he owned the truth, the first time. I saw our shop's social media page list the credits as Tyler and Harold Restoration. I stared at it for a long time. My name second, his first. A small thing. Just a few letters switched. But names matter. Order matters. The world sees who stands in front and who stands behind. And for the first time, I felt myself shifting backward. Then came the late nights. I'd come in early, always have. Always will, and I'd find fresh oil stains. Used rags, tools, left in places I'd never leave them. He was staying in the shop long after I left, working without me. But not just working. Meeting people, buyers, dealers, investors, people who didn't know me. People he didn't introduce me to. When I asked him about it, he laughed, said I was overthinking, said he was hustling for both of us. Then the clothes changed. No more frayed sleeves. No more worn denim jacket 2 sizes too big. Now he looked polished, tailored, rings, watches, hairstyled like he was heading to a photo shoot instead of a garage. He started hanging around people who spoke fast, smiled wide, and didn't know how to use a wrench but acted like they owned the sun. One evening, I came into the shop to find him leaning against the GTO, laughing into his phone. He didn't say "Pops." He didn't even look at me. He just lifted one finger, the universal sign for wait. When he hung up, he said, "What's up, Harold?" Just my name, no warmth, no history, no weight. It was strange how a simple name could feel like a door slamming shut. But I still didn't see the truth. Not yet. The truth came the night I walked into the office and saw the papers spread across the desk. Not messy, not accidental, laid out neat, like someone proud of their work. Title transfer forms, business ownership, registration, bank account authorization, shop licensing. Every line typed clean, every box checked, every signature line signed. My name written in my handwriting, except it wasn't my handwriting. He had practiced, traced, learned the rhythm of my letters. He had been preparing this for months, maybe longer. I didn't hear him come in behind me. I only felt him. His presence changed the air. When I turned, he wasn't scared. He wasn't ashamed. He didn't stumble or explain or try to pretend. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets and said, in a calm, steady voice, "I think it's time the business moved into younger hands." Harold, not Pops. Harold. He didn't just take my shop, he took the name I earned. He took the years I gave him. He took the place I gave him in my heart. And he spoke like he was doing me a favor. He thought I wouldn't fight. He thought I would bend, break, fade. He thought age meant weakness. He thought patience meant softness. He thought kindness meant surrender. He never understood what a man becomes after he crawls up out of grief and keeps living. Anyway, he didn't know what kind of fire sits quietly inside a person who has already lost the love of his life and survived. He didn't know what I learned after Linda died. When silence replaces love, that's when a man becomes dangerous. The months that followed didn't collapse all at once. They didn't explode or crack like some dramatic movie scene. They settled over me slowly, like dust on forgotten furniture. The first morning I drove to the shop, I had a thermos of coffee in my hand and a list of things to do in my head. Routine, familiar, steady. I'd been doing the same thing for over 30 years. The shop door was always open before sunrise. My shop, my life, my purpose. But that morning, the key didn't turn. The lock had been changed at first. I just stared at the door like it was a joke someone was about to explain. Like Tyler would pop his head out with a sheepish grin and tell me he messed up. But the door stayed closed. The shop stayed silent. And it hit me like cold water. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a bad moment. This was intentional. He froze me out. The next blow came faster. Customers I had known for years stopped calling. Men who used to greet me like a brother avoided eye contact at the grocery store. The owner of the hardware supply store said, in a careful voice, that he heard I decided to step back, retire, rest, take time for myself. Tyler had announced to the world that I was done, and the world believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was young. He had that spark in his voice, that shine in his eyes, that charming confidence people mistake for truth. People love the story of new blood taking over. They clap for the rising star. And I was just the old man. The mentor, the supporting role. I became background, a shadow. It is a strange thing to watch your own life walk away without you. Inside my house, silence grew thick. The rooms felt empty in a new way. I had already lived through one kind of quiet, the quiet after Linda passed, when the world feels like it has been hollowed out. But this quiet was different. This one tasted like failure. Like maybe everything I built had been smoked the entire time and I didn't see it until the wind blew. I didn't rage. I didn't throw anything. I didn't pound my fists against the table. The grief came soft this time, heavy but quiet. I would make coffee and sit in the kitchen staring at the same patch of wall, and tears would just start, slow and steady, like rain dripping from a roof that never ends. No sound, no sobbing, just leaking sadness, because it wasn't the business papers that hurt most. It wasn't the lost customers. It wasn't even the money. It was the memories. All those years in that shop. The hum of engines warming. The radio playing old rock songs. The smell of motor oil mixed with coffee. The sound of Linda leaning against the doorframe, teasing me for still being at work after. Midnight, the way my father's voice echoed in my mind. Every time I tightened a bolt or checked a carburetor, that place held my life story in its walls, and he shut the door on it like it was nothing. Tyler didn't just take the shop, he took the history. Inside it, he took the version of me that felt useful. He took the identity that kept me standing after Linda died. And for a while, I let that break me. I stopped shaving. The mirror became a stranger. Food lost its taste. Days blended together like spilled ink. I wasn't living. I was waiting. For what? I didn't know. Maybe for the world to remember me. Maybe for Tyler to realize what he had done. Maybe just for the silence to stop hurting so much. But here is the thing about grief. When you already know what the deepest loss feels like, when you have already watched the person you love most slip away from your hands, when you have already walked through that fire, you learn something. You learn that pain does not kill you, it changes you. It strips away the parts that were weak, wishful, naive, and it leaves behind something harder, something quieter, something unbreakable. One morning, I woke up before the sun like I used to. The house was still dim, the air cold, and I realized the crying had stopped. Not because the hurt was gone, but because something inside me had shifted. Grief had finished its work. I was awake now, and I was not done. I didn't storm down to lawyers. I didn't march into the sheriff's office waving papers and shouting betrayal. That kind of response comes from people who think everything can be fixed quickly. No, I had already learned something very old and very true. When someone cuts you slow, you don't rush the answer. You watch. So I became quiet, not defeated. Quiet like winter before spring knows it is coming. I spent my days driving old back roads in my pickup, hands on the wheel but my mind in the past, replaying every moment with Tyler. The jokes, the dinners, the late night sanding jobs. Every small hesitation I ignored. Every compliment that came a little too smooth. Every time he asked about the business structure. The little signs were always there. But love, even the Father Tuzan kind, can blind you if you want it to. I didn't call customers asking what they'd heard. I didn't talk to neighbors. I didn't tell anyone what really happened. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to understand something deeper. Why? Why would a boy who looked at me like I hung the moon become the very thing that dimmed it? I sat in my living room, old family photos on the walls, Linda smiling in nearly every one, and I thought about her, the way she used to say, "People hurt from where they've been hurt." I didn't understand the full weight of that sentence until Tyler took everything, so I started looking into him, not like some detective with files and charts. No, I went simple, direct, human. I drove back to the neighborhood where he first told me he'd grown up. A rough place outside Columbus. Rows of run-down apartments, windows patched with cardboard, chain-link fences leaning like they were tired. I went into a small diner there, the kind where the tables are scratched and the coffee tastes like it's been sitting for 3 days. I showed the waitress a picture of Tyler. She recognized him immediately. Yeah, that kid, always quiet, kept to himself. Had it rough. Mama got locked up when he was little. He bounced around a bunch of homes. It was strange hearing his life spoken by someone who didn't know the version of him I did, like hearing 2 different songs playing at once. I kept following the thread. Foster Records said his mother had been released, living in a small town about an hour south. I don't know why I went. Curiosity, anger, maybe a need I didn't want to recognize. The house was tiny. Paint peeling, yard patchy. A broken plastic chair sitting on the porch. I knocked, not sure what I was expecting. When she opened the door, I saw him in her face. The same eyes, the same shape of jaw, the same tired sadness. She didn't ask who I was. She just stared for a moment and said, very soft, "You must be the one he calls Pops." And that sentence, I felt it like a slow punch to the ribs. She invited me in. No hesitation, as if she had been expecting this chapter for years. We sat at a flimsy kitchen table. She smoked. I didn't say a word for a while. Then she spoke. "He's terrified of being abandoned. Always has been. Every time someone tried to get close, he'd ruin it first. Control the ending. Thought that made the loss hurt less. Felt that land heavy. He didn't take my business because he wanted to destroy me. He took it because he thought one day I was going to leave him like everyone else had. So his mind answered the fear for him. Leave first. Take everything so there's nothing left to lose. Because if I had nothing, I couldn't walk away." I sat there, listening to this woman talk, and something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Not anywhere close. But understanding. Understanding can be a weapon. Understanding can be a map. Understanding can be a mirror. The betrayal didn't hurt less, but now I knew what I was fighting. Not greed, not malice, fear, and fear can be used. I walked out of that house different. Then I walked in, not broken, not healed, focused, the kind of focus that comes when the fog finally lifts and you see the battlefield clearly. He thought I was old. He thought I was finished. He thought I was sitting alone in that quiet house, waiting for life to close the door on me. What he didn't know was this: a man who has already lost everything once has nothing left to lose, and a man with nothing left to lose is someone you should never underestimate. Because I wasn't done, not even close. Revenge isn't always fire and thunder. Sometimes it's quiet, cold, precise, the kind of thing that doesn't raise its voice because it doesn't have to. I learned that from old age, from grief, from time. Time teaches you how to move without wasting steps. So I didn't storm into that shop. I didn't show up red-faced and shaking. I didn't give him the satisfaction of believing he had wrecked me. I simply sat at my kitchen table one morning, the same table where he once ate Christmas dinner with me, laughing like family, and I opened a folder I should have opened a long time ago. The car title, the GTO Judge, the crown jewel, the masterpiece. That car was everything to the shop. The spotlight, the industry attention, the sponsorships, the client pipeline, the dream, and it was still mine. See, in all his planning, all his forging, all his reshuffling of bank accounts and legal paperwork, Tyler overlooked the most important piece. I never transferred the title of that car. Not because I was suspicious, but because sometimes life hands you protection you don't realize is protection until the world breaks. So I went to the bank, not in anger, not even with satisfaction, just with clarity, like a quiet morning when the fog lifts and things finally make sense. The banker recognized me, asked how retirement was treating me. I smiled, polite, steady. I need to file a repossession request, I said. The paperwork took less than an hour. 3 signatures, a stamp, and the law leaned back toward me like an old friend who never left. I arranged the tow, not at night, not quietly, not in the shadows, in broad daylight. I wanted it seen, not because I needed spectacle, but because truth deserves open air. The truck pulled up to the shop, hydraulic lift humming. There were customers inside, people strolling the lot, the kind of midday traffic that made the shop look alive, the life I helped build but was no longer welcome in. When the tow driver backed in and hooked onto that GTO Judge, the shop went still, like the air held its breath. Tyler came running out, and for the first time since the betrayal, I saw the boy in him again. Not the businessman, not the confident salesman, not the up-and-coming success story. The boy, the one who used to ask me how I knew when a carburetor was tuned by ear, the one who called me Pops like the word was a rope he climbed out of loneliness with. His face was pale. His voice cracked when he said, "Harold, Pops, what are you doing? Please, please don't." That word Pops hit the air like a memory trying to crawl its way back from the grave. I didn't raise my voice. Stillness can be louder than anger. I stepped close enough that only he could hear me. I wanted my words to land in the place where truth has no escape. "You took my trust for granted," I said. "You took my home. You took my name. You took every moment I gave you and treated it like it was nothing. You don't get to call me Pops anymore." He froze. The world didn't end. The sky didn't break. The shop didn't burn. But something inside him collapsed. I saw it. I felt it. That boy who feared abandonment finally understood what real loss felt like. He reached out, not to grab me, but like someone reaching for a hand that isn't there anymore. I didn't take his hand. I nodded to the tow driver. The car rolled away. The GTO Judge, our masterpiece, vanished down the road like a history correcting itself, and I walked to my truck, opened the door, sat down. No yelling, no victory speech, no dramatic exit, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when a storm passes and the world is still learning how to breathe again. As I drove away, I realized something. Hadn't destroyed him. I hadn't lashed back. I had simply restored balance. He took something priceless from me, so I took something priceless from him, not to punish, but to remind him. Trust is a gift. Once broken, you don't get it back. The thing about glory is that it's fragile, shiny, loud, full of lights and applause. But underneath, it depends on something quiet and steady. Truth. And once the truth leaves, the shine goes with it. The shop, without the GTO, without the story of us, without the hearts behind the work, began to wilt. Not overnight, not with an explosion, but slowly, like a building whose foundation is starting to crack, beam by beam, until one day the whole thing just leans in the wrong direction and can't stand anymore. At first, Tyler tried to fake it. He took photos of half-finished projects and posted them like they were complete restorations. He bought cheap replacement parts and passed them off as originals. He smiled too hard in the shop's live streams, voice brittle but energetic, like a man taping together a dam with packing tape while the water rises behind him. But the car world is small. People talk. Collectors especially. They don't just buy chrome and engines. They buy trust. They buy legacy. They buy the name behind the restoration, and the name behind that GTO was mine, not his. Words started to slide through garages, auctions, dealer circles. Something's off over there. One sponsorship that had been dangling for months pulled back. Quiet and polite, the way business does when it doesn't want to explain why it's backing away. Then another. Then the collector group that had been visiting the shop twice a year simply stopped showing up. People didn't argue. They just faded. You don't always hear the sound of a career breaking. Sometimes it just gets quieter and quieter until there's nothing left but the echo. Bills began to pile on his desk. Rent, utilities, tool financing, shop insurance, payroll for the one part-time kid he hired to replace the help he used to get for free from me. I heard about it through the grapevine, because towns, even towns that pretend to be big, are small when people have history in them, once or twice. I drove by slowly, just enough to see the sign struggling to stay lit at night. Paint peeling where sunlight used to hit it warm and proud. The parking lot empty, except for the same two dusty sedans that never seemed to move. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel avenged. I felt older, because watching someone you loved destroy themselves is not victory. It is grief in a new shape. 6 months later, the shop closed. Doors chained. Windows dark. Auctions held for tools and lifts and worn-out office desks. The kind of quiet ending that doesn't make headlines, just folds back into the world like it never mattered. One evening, as winter crawled in and the air tasted of snow, he showed up at my door, not with fire, not with rage, but with that same thin frame he had when he walked into my shop years ago. The denim jacket was newer, but it still didn't fit him right. It hung off him like he was a kid borrowing clothes from a man he wasn't ready to be. His voice was small when he said my name. Not Pops, not Harold, just a quiet, cracked, "Can we talk?" We sat on the porch, because I wasn't ready to let him inside the house again. He kept his eyes on his hands, hands that once held wrenches with steady purpose, now fidgeting like he didn't know where to put them. "I'm sorry," he said, but I could hear it, the tremor. Not the tremor of regret, but the tremor of loss. He wasn't apologizing for the betrayal. He wasn't apologizing for the papers he forged, or the lies he told, or the family he walked away from. He was apologizing because he failed, and that kind of apology is hollow. He was sorry that the world hadn't rewarded him for taking everything from me. That's when something inside me settled. Not anger, not bitterness, not even relief, just understanding, heavy and still, like a stone sinking to the bottom of a lake. I finally saw him clearly. A boy who believed love was something that could be stolen before it could be taken away. A boy who thought the only way to avoid loss was to cause it first. Boy who didn't know how to be held, so he learned how to break things. I didn't speak for a long time, and in that silence, I realized I didn't need revenge anymore, because life, real life, had already delivered the consequences that mattered. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind with shouting and slamming doors. The quiet kind. The kind that comes when truth stands still and lets someone see themselves without a shield. When I finally spoke, I didn't say much. Take care of yourself. I said, not forgiveness, not welcome, not hatred, just truth. He nodded, stood, walked away. No dramatic goodbye. No dramatic goodbye. No second chance. No return of what was lost. Just the ending that was always coming. And the world, for the first time in a long time, felt still. I didn't rush the restoration this time. There was no deadline, no audience, no anxious sun hovering over my shoulder telling me what sponsors wanted or what would look good on a camera. It was just me, the garage light humming softly, the radio playing low, the smell of old metal, engine grease, and quiet mornings. I would wake up, make a cup of coffee, and step into that garage like stepping into a small private church, where every tool was a prayer and every bolt had a memory attached to it. The car didn't fight me the way it used to. Or maybe I was just gentler this time. I took my time sanding down each panel, remembering the first restoration. How young Tyler was back then. How eager, how bright, how full of dreams that felt shared. He used to stand beside me and ask about every part, every step, every trick. He used to care about learning before he cared about owning. I could still hear his voice in the corners of the garage sometimes, like a ghost that wasn't there to haunt, just to echo what once was. But now it was just me, and the car, and silence. And strangely, that silence felt like healing. I rebuilt the carburetor slowly, polishing each piece as if time itself had patience now. I hand-buffed the paint until it reflected my face, not as it used to be, but as it had become, lined with time, steadier, quieter, stronger. There was no anger left in my hands, only steadiness. And when I finally finished, not in a dramatic reveal, not with anyone cheering, not with cameras or crowds, I rolled the garage door up and let the sunlight fall across the hood. The car gleamed, not loud, not flashy, just whole. I didn't take it to car shows. I didn't parade it through town. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. It sits in my garage now, like a photo you keep in a frame. A memory of who I was, who he was, and who we were together before pride and hunger and ego got in the way. Sometimes I sit in the driver's seat, not to drive, but just to breathe. The leather is warm, the steering wheel familiar, and I think about how love and trust are delicate things, easier to break than metal, harder to repair than engines. Tyler left town not long after the shop closed, moved states, drifted into small jobs, never settling. People tell me he looks tired now, like he's still chasing something he can't fully name: respect, approval, identity. Maybe the version of himself he lost along the way. And I don't hate him. I don't replay the angry parts anymore. I don't sharpen the memory of what he did like a knife, because hate ties you to a person. It keeps you linked. And I had to let him go. The same way you let go of something you can't carry without hurting yourself. I didn't lose a son. I just stopped fighting for a version of him that didn't exist anymore. And in that quiet garage, with the GTO still and shining like a heartbeat that calmed instead of raced, I learned something. Some endings do not need fireworks. Some endings do not need tears. Some endings do not need revenge. Trust is one of those fragile things we spend a lifetime building. Is peace. And yet, so often, we hand it out like it's nothing. I've learned it the hard way. When you're young, you think giving someone your trust is a kind of power, a way to shape the world. You hand it to people with open hands, thinking it will make them better, thinking it will make you closer. But as you get older, you realize trust is more than just a bridge between hearts. It's a responsibility, and sometimes it can be a weapon in the wrong hands. I trusted Tyler with everything: my business, my memories, my life. I taught him not just about engines and chrome, but about patience, respect, about the quiet ways the world rewards hard work and loyalty. And he turned that trust into a ladder to climb over me. It hurt, yes, bitterly, but the lesson was louder than the pain. Blind trust, no matter how pure the intention, can leave you exposed. Trust should be precious, sacred even, but it should never give someone else the power to undo your life. Loyalty, love, guidance, these are gifts. Give them freely, but wisely. Protect your heart without closing it, because sometimes the very people you choose to save, to nurture, to elevate, are the ones who will try to sink you just to keep from feeling small themselves. It's a hard truth, but the world is full of hard truths, disguised as kindness and revenge. People think revenge needs fireworks, drama, chaos. They imagine shouting, lawsuits, public disgrace. But real revenge, the kind that changes the game, doesn't have to be loud at all. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, invisible. Sometimes it's about stepping back, letting the world unfold, letting actions speak louder than words, letting the truth do the work. You don't have to break yourself trying to break someone else. Sometimes the universe does that for you, if you only have the patience to wait. I learned that trust, once broken, can still teach you. Betrayal can still instruct, and loss can still heal you if you allow it. Tyler's betrayal took so much from me, but in the end, it gave me something far greater: clarity, peace, a reminder that my life, my work, my heart belongs only to me. And that's a lesson no one, no matter how charming, clever, or desperate, can take away. So if there's one thing I'd leave anyone with, it's this: give love, give trust, give guidance, but hold the keys to your life close. Protect what's yours. Stand tall even when someone tries to step over you. And above all, remember, sometimes the quietest hands, the ones who never raise a fist, hold the power to break the hardest hearts. And in that quiet lies the truest form of justice.